Cluster systems are really great ways to define and segment markets because what they do is they use a national sample and they build essentially homogeneous groups of people that have really interesting descriptions and they're very easy to define. And what they're useful for is that they give you a persona for each one of their segments as well as quantifying them. And so I'm going to give you some of the cluster systems that are Personicx by Acxiom, but there are other clustering systems out there, but you'll see how easy they are to use. What cluster systems do is they use demography, lifestyles, behaviors, attitudes, and social activities to build cluster segments that are unique within each one of the markets and that are distinct from all other segments. And so they use statistics like k-means to cluster it. I'm actually going to give you the technical documentation on how they're built as well as the descriptive information that you need. And so the way to think about it is that they're like galaxies in space. A lot of times clients will ask me, what is a cluster system? Well, it's like the different galaxies that are spinning around in space. Each one is a unique cluster, and there's blank space in between one galaxy to the next one. And so the key is that the clusters are homogeneous within themselves and distinct from all other groups. There are a number of companies, as I said, that offer them: Acxiom, Experian, InfoUSA, Dun& Bradstreet. I use Acxiom here simply because the Personicx clusters are nice in that they have a lot of deep information on each one of the cluster segments and the personas. And so basically what it does is it develops a tracking system that starts with young people up here on the 18 to 34 grid up on the top, and then follows it around as they get older and older until they retire in the 65 plus clusters on the left. And so each one of these circles represents a different cluster, and we'll show you those here in a minute to see how they work. This is the actual clustering system. You notice it starts with beginnings, and then you'll notice they have a whole series of clusters that are numbered and that are defined. So from the beginnings, we have early parents, first digs that people are into. Here are the collegiates, the people in college. Here are the blue collar workers. These are people that travel a lot, are the Rolling Stones. Then taking hold is where they get married, they begin to have children. Then there's transition, outward bound, trucking, and so forth. And then you get to see how they break down as they move through. So the cluster 01 is the beginning. Cluster 21 is where you're at the end of the end of your life, I guess, in terms of getting older. And so you basically see people as they move through the cluster segments. And basically the Ys are the younger people, the Gen Xers are the X's, that moves to the Bs, which is another group. Then you move to the mature people that are the M's, and the seniors are the S's. And so it gives you a way of kind of seeing how they work. This is how they're actually developed and pulled together. These are the dimensions that were used in building the segments, and you'll see more about that in the technical documentation. City and surrounds means it's the surrounding areas right around the city. Then you have the suburbs and towns and so forth, and rural as a way of breaking down geography, urbanicity as they call it. Then what you have within each one is you get, if you look over here on the left, these are the this is cluster 39, early parents. One of the things you get is some nice pictures of who they are and where they live. You also get about them, and you get to see basically where they are in the country. You notice that on the right, you see what they shop for, where they go, what sort of financial insurance they do, what they watch on TV, and so forth. Then for the early parents on the right, you get a complete breakdown of the demography of that group. So on the left, you actually get sort of a scenic picture of who they are. A lot of times it'll have a day in the life of the people. Here it talks about them. Then the next one, we'll get the demography. And so it allows us to get us a whole lot of stuff. And the interesting part is these are also international. So there are codes for Britain and other sorts of international markets. You need to go out and look at them. but basically they have these different sorts of groups that go across the world. So you can begin to cluster different groups there. And so as you go back, let me go back one. When you're looking at this, what you have up here in the upper right on the name of it is the size of the cluster. So cluster 39 is 1,951,400 households, which is 1.58% of the United States as a whole. And so then you also get the methodology as to how they built them. And so I'll give you the complete technical documentation along with the actual clusters, in this section.